My name is Ian, and if you met me today, you'd think I had it all together. I live in a modest but clean apartment in downtown Chicago. I've got a decent job at a nonprofit, a few good friends, and a routine that keeps me grounded. But under the calm surface, there's a wound I've carried for years, one I never let anyone see. My parents disowned me 6 years ago. Not drifted apart. Not things got distant.
No.
They cut me off completely, like I never existed. They said I brought shame to the family. They said I was ungrateful, arrogant, disrespectful. But all I ever did was stand up for myself. I chose a different path. I refused to become a copy of them, the obedient son, the puppet dancing on strings of tradition and expectation. That was the crime. That was enough for them to turn their backs and never look back. 6 years. 6 years of silence, holidays spent alone, birthdays I didn't bother celebrating. I buried them in my heart long ago, like carving their names on tombstones. I built a life with no family, just me. But 3 weeks ago, something shifted. It was a Tuesday, a cold, gray sky, the kind that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. I was making coffee in the kitchen, scrolling through emails when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I ignore those. But something about it, maybe it was the timing, maybe it was the weight in the air. I answered. There was silence on the line for a second, and then a faint breath. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Ian. My heart dropped. I didn't need to guess. I knew that voice. My mother. Hesitant, fragile, like she was afraid I'd hang up. I said nothing. Just held the phone, frozen. Please don't hang up, she said quickly. We need to talk. I hung up, not because I was angry, well, not just that. It was because my body didn't know what to do. My brain couldn't process it. It was like hearing the voice of a ghost you swore you'd buried. I stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes, staring at the phone. It didn't ring again. No follow-up text. Nothing. I went to work that day like a zombie. The world moved in color, but I was stuck in grayscale. Every voice reminded me of hers. Every soft-spoken coworker. Every passing stranger. I kept hearing her whisper, "We need to talk."
We?
After 6 years of radio silence, I told myself it was nothing.
A mistake.
Maybe she meant to call someone else. Maybe she was sick or confused. I tried to dismiss it, to shove it into the mental attic with all the other discarded family memories. But it wouldn't go. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, my father's cold stare, my mother's tear-streaked eyes from that final day. The screaming, the silence that followed, the slamming of the door behind me. I got out of bed and made tea, sat on the balcony, despite the cold. The city lights blinked in the distance like distant stars. I told myself again it meant nothing. But the next morning, I received a message. This time on Facebook. From an account with no profile picture. "We need you, Ian. Please. I know we don't deserve anything, but this is serious." There was no name. Just that. Sent at 2:17 a.m. I stared at the message. My hand trembled. I hadn't heard the word "we" used that way, including me, in so long. It felt foreign. Almost offensive. Why now? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the photo albums on my laptop. A bad idea, I know. But some self-destructive part of me wanted to feel it again. The full ache of it. I scrolled through childhood photos. Family picnics. My parents' anniversary party. My high school graduation. The last happy photo before everything fell apart.
Then I saw it.
A photo I didn't remember uploading. It was new. A recent picture. Maybe a week old. It showed our old house. The porch light was on. And standing on the steps was my father. Older, thinner, frilier. I gasped and slammed the laptop shut. I hadn't seen him in years. How did that photo get there? I never downloaded it. I checked the file info. It had been synced from my cloud, but I never took it. My fingers were trembling now. I started breathing hard. Something was wrong. Something was deeply, deeply wrong. But I still told myself it was coincidence. Glitches. Mistaken identity. I mean, I hadn't spoken to them in years. What could they possibly want from me now? I went to work pretending everything was fine. Smiled. Answered emails. Gave a presentation. But inside, I was unraveling. Then came the call that changed everything. Friday night, 11:44 p.m. Another unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Voicemail transcription popped up on my screen. One line only. If you don't come soon, it'll be too late. That was it. No name. No explanation. Just that. I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone still in my hand, and I felt it. That undeniable pull. That ache I tried so hard to kill. The part of me that still wanted to understand. Still wanted answers. Still wanted to know why. Because even after everything they did, after every cruel word and every cold shoulder, a part of me still asked, what if they're telling the truth? That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until morning, heart racing. Something had begun. A thread had been pulled. And I couldn't stop it now. By Saturday morning, I was unraveling, but I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself. I made breakfast, but the eggs stayed untouched. My thoughts circled around that voicemail. If you don't come soon, it'll be too late. What did that even mean? Too late for what? For who? I told myself I didn't care, that they didn't deserve my concern. But that lie was getting harder to swallow. I sat in the living room with my laptop open, the Facebook message still on the screen. Still no follow-up. I clicked on the profile again, no photo, no friends, no identifying info. Just an empty shell. I hovered over the block button. My thumb trembled. Instead, I clicked message. Who is this? I typed. No response. I waited for 5 minutes, then got up and began pacing. I hated how this was affecting me. I hated how easily they still got under my skin. I'd worked so hard to move on, to build a new life. And now all it took was a ghost from the past whispering my name to shake the foundation. Later that day, I called Sarah, my best friend. We'd known each other since college. I think my parents are trying to contact me, I told her, voice low like I was confessing something shameful. Wait, after all this time? She asked, stunned. What do they want? I don't know. My mom called. Then someone messaged me. Then a photo showed up on my computer. And a voicemail saying it might be too late. Too late for what? I don't know, I said. That's the part that's eating at me. Do you think it's legit? Like it's really them? I think so, I said. But I haven't responded. There was a pause on the line. Do you want to respond? And there it was, the question I didn't know how to answer. I don't know, I whispered. A part of me wants to ignore it. Another part wants answers. Just be careful, she said. Don't let them drag you back into the same pain. You left for a reason. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That night, I sat in the dark with only the glow of the TV flickering in the corner. I wasn't watching it. My eyes were locked on my phone. 10:22 p.m. Then 10:49. Then 11:07. Still nothing. I turned off the TV and stood to go to bed when my phone buzzed again. A text this time. Unknown number. Your father is sick. Very sick. He might not have long. My breath hitched. That was it. Just a line. But it changed everything. Suddenly, memories I'd buried flooded back. The way he used to cough in the mornings. The years of stubborn denial about seeing a doctor. Was this real? I called the number. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I just sat there, phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline.
I didn't sleep again that night.
Instead, I began to dig. The next morning, I drove to my old neighborhood. I hadn't been back since I left. The streets still looked the same, but I didn't. I was no longer the scared kid who begged to be heard.
I was someone else now.
I parked a few blocks away and walked. The house stood just like I remembered it. White siding, rusting mailbox, wind chimes still hanging from the porch. But something felt off. The curtains were drawn. No sign of movement inside. I stood across the street, heart pounding.
Then I saw it.
A shadow in the window. Just for a second. then gone. I turned to leave, but a voice behind me stopped me in my tracks. I turned around slowly. It was my uncle, my father's younger brother. I hadn't seen him in nearly a decade. He looked startled, like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. "Is it true?" I finally said. "Is he sick?" He looked away. "How did you find out?" he asked.
They contacted me, I said.
"Somebody did." He nodded slowly. "He's not doing well," he said.
Cancer.
Advanced. The word hit me like a punch in the chest. "How long?" I asked. "They're saying weeks. Maybe less." I felt the world tilt slightly. Why didn't anyone tell me? He looked at me with sadness in his eyes. "Your mother wanted to," he said. "Your father, he was stubborn. But now they need me?" I snapped. He didn't answer. "After everything they said? Everything they did?" "I know," he said quietly. "But he's still your father." That night, I went home, still shaking. I stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at my own reflection. My face looked like a stranger's. Pale, drawn, haunted. I opened the drawer and pulled out the old letter, the one they sent me after I left. I had read it once, years ago, and then hid it away. But now I unfolded it again. "You have chosen a path of disgrace. We raised you better.
You are no longer welcome in this family.
Do not contact us again." That was the final line, burned into memory. And now they wanted me back? I started to wonder, why now? Was it guilt? Desperation? Or was there something else I didn't know? I didn't have answers, only suspicion, and a growing dread that I was about to walk into something far more complicated than an apology. 2 days later, I stood at their doorstep. The same door I had once stormed out of nearly 10 years ago, vowing never to return. My hand hovered above the doorbell, heart pounding in my chest like it wanted to escape. I had told myself I was coming just for closure, to satisfy my own curiosity. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just curiosity. It was gravity. Some invisible pull dragging me back into a world I had barely escaped from. I rang the bell. Nothing. I rang again. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate. The door opened, and there she was, my mother. Her hair was gray now, thinner than I remembered. Her face had aged, etched with lines and shadows. But her eyes, those were the same. Sharp, watchful. But this time, they didn't hold judgment. They held something else. Regret. "Ian," she whispered, almost like she didn't believe I was real. I didn't speak. I couldn't. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. I entered slowly. The air inside was stale. Time had thickened it somehow. The house was dim, cluttered, smaller than I remembered. Memories clung to every surface. "He's in the bedroom," she said. "Sleeping. But he'll want to see you." "I'm not here for long," I replied, voice cold. "I just came to see if it's true." She looked down, as if bracing herself. "It's true." We sat in the living room. She brought me tea, the same way she used to. But now her hands trembled. Neither of us drank. "I didn't expect you to come," she said finally. "After everything, you disowned me," I said flatly. "I know," she whispered. "No," I said louder now. "You didn't just cut me off. You made sure I knew I was dead to you. You said it in writing." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't stop. "You told everyone I was a disgrace. You let them talk about me like I wasn't your child. You never once stood up for me." She nodded, a silent confession. "I was wrong," she said. I laughed, bitter and dry. "Now you see that?" She leaned forward, gripping the edge of the sofa. "Ian, we were scared. Your father, he didn't understand. He thought." "He thought what?" I snapped. "That love was conditional? That being different meant being abandoned?" She flinched. "He didn't know how to deal with it. Neither did I." I shook my head. "You didn't try." There was a long silence between us, the kind that hurts your ears. Then I heard it, a cough. Low and raspy. My mother stood. "He's awake." I followed her down the hallway. The room was dark, the blinds drawn shut. And there he was, my father. A shell of the man I once feared. Thinner than I remembered. Hollow cheeks. For lines. Machines humming like lullabies of decay. He turned slowly when he heard me. And for a second, we both froze. Ian, he said, voice cracking. I nodded. My throat tightened. You came, he whispered. I did. I didn't think you would. I stepped closer, unsure why my legs were moving. He tried to sit up, but his body wouldn't let him. My mother propped him with pillows. I'm dying, he said, as if I didn't already know. I heard. Another silence. He looked at me, eyes glistening. I was wrong. I said nothing. I didn't know how to accept what I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting the family, but I ended up destroying it. A lump formed in my throat. I told myself I was doing what was right, he continued. But it was fear.
Pride.
Ego. I looked away, staring at the peeling paint on the wall. I hurt you, he said, and I don't expect forgiveness. I looked back at him. Then why am I here? He didn't answer right away. Then he reached to the nightstand and pulled out an envelope. There's something I need you to have. I took it cautiously. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Me as a child. Me in high school. College. Some I didn't even know existed. And on the back of each one, his handwriting, dates, captions, memories. I kept them all, he said. Even after we told you never to come back. I never stopped looking at them. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. I watched your TED Talk, he added. That stopped me cold. You watched it? He nodded slowly. You said things I didn't want to hear. Things that made me ashamed. But I needed to hear them. I sat down in the chair beside his bed. I've lived with regret every day since you left, he whispered. I just didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a blur of emotions, anger, sorrow, confusion, longing. But then something else caught my eye. A folder, half buried beneath a stack of books on the dresser.
My name was on it.
I walked over and opened it. Inside were letters.
Dozens of them.
All written by my father.
To me.
Unsent. Every year on your birthday, he said quietly, I wrote you. I just never had the courage to send them. I read the first few lines. I know you'll never read this, but I still write it. Maybe to ease my own guilt. Maybe to feel close to you. Maybe both. I sat back down, dazed. He reached out, his hand weak and trembling. I hesitated, then held it. I don't deserve your help, he said. But I'm still your father. And for the first time in years, I saw him, not as the man who broke me, but as the man who broke himself trying to fix it. Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. I didn't know if I could forgive. But in that moment, I knew one thing. The truth was far more complicated than I ever imagined. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was too quiet. My mother was in the garden, tending to flowers that had long since wilted, and my father was asleep again, hooked to machines that sounded like ticking clocks, counting down what little time was left. I held the folder of letters in my hands, flipping through pages that bled regret and words never meant to be read. But I read them anyway, every one of them, year after year, birthday after birthday, pain etched in ink. There was one letter that stopped me cold. It was from the year I left. You left today. The door slammed, and the silence afterward was louder than any argument we ever had. Your mother cried all night. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall, wondering if I had just killed the only relationship that mattered. But I couldn't admit it, not even to her. I was too proud, too scared. I clutched the paper, fingers trembling. And that's when something inside me snapped. I stood and marched toward the bedroom. He was awake. His eyes met mine. I didn't sit this time. I stood at the edge of his bed, folder in hand. You had all this time, I said, voice shaking. All these years. You could have sent a single letter, one message, one phone call. He looked down, silent. I waited. I continued. Every year. I waited for something. a sign, an apology, anything to tell me I wasn't completely abandoned. He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. You made me feel like I didn't exist. Like who I was, what I was something to be erased. And the worst part? I believed you. I believed that I was unworthy of love. That I was broken. His hands tightened into fists under the blanket. You told me I was disgusting. You said I was no longer your son. He looked up at me, eyes filled with pain. I said those things because I didn't understand. Because I was afraid of what the world would say. I thought I was protecting you from shame. But I was wrong. I see that now. No, I said. You weren't trying to protect me. You were protecting yourself. From embarrassment. From judgment. From having to explain to your friends that your son didn't fit their idea of normal. He swallowed hard, chest rising and falling with labored breaths. I don't know what you want from me now, I said. You want me to forgive you? To sit by your side and play the role of the loving son while you fade away? After everything? He looked broken, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry. But then he said something that stopped me cold. I never stopped loving you. My breath caught in my throat. You have a strange way of showing it, I said. I know, he whispered, but I need you to believe me. I turned away, unable to face him. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay, I said. You shattered me. You took years of my life and filled them with silence and shame. I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I'm asking you to let me say what I couldn't say before. I turned back to him, and something in his eyes made me pause. They weren't just eyes of a dying man. They were eyes of a father who knew he had failed his child. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said, but I'm begging for it anyway. The room was still. Even the machines seemed to quiet for a moment. I sat down slowly. You know, I said, the worst part wasn't you cutting me off. It was realizing that even if I came back successful, respected, even loved by others, I would still never be enough for you. He didn't argue. And then my mother entered. Her face was pale, her hands still dusty from the garden. She stood in the doorway, listening, as if she'd been waiting for the right moment to step in. I was complicit, she said softly. I didn't fight for you. I let him decide everything, and I was too afraid to speak up. And every day since, I've hated myself for it. I looked between them, two people who had once held my world in their hands and crushed it like glass. And now here they were.
Crying. Begging.
I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said. My mother nodded. You don't have to. But we are your parents, my father added. And we're trying even if it's too late. For a while, no one spoke. I wiped my face, the tears coming harder now. I didn't come back because I wanted to. I finally said. I came back because part of me still needed answers. I needed to look you in the eye and see if there was anything left of the people who raised me. And what do you see? My father asked. I stared at him. I see regret. I see guilt. And maybe a little bit of truth. He reached out his hand again. This time, I took it. Not as a sign of forgiveness, but maybe as a beginning of something new. Or, at least, the end of what had been festering for too long. I left the room with my father's fragile grip still lingering on my hand. The house, once filled with tension and silence, now pulsed with something else. Something heavier. Not quite peace. Not quite closure. Just the ghost of something long dead, stirring in its grave. I stepped outside. The morning sun glared off the driveway. The world continued, unaware that inside that crumbling house, decades of silence had cracked open like a wound. I lit a cigarette I didn't need and watched the smoke curl, trying to make sense of everything. Had I really forgiven him?
No.
Not yet. But maybe forgiveness wasn't a door you walked through. Maybe it was a hallway you limped down, wounded and unsure, hoping that eventually the light would find you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the old bed, my bed, surrounded by trophies I no longer cared about and posters of a version of myself I didn't recognize. It felt like sleeping in a stranger's life. Around 3 a.m., I got up. Something in me felt unsettled. I walked through the dark hallway toward the study. The folder of letters was still there. I pulled out one final envelope I hadn't opened yet. It had no date, no name. Just a single sentence written on the outside in trembling handwriting. If you ever come back. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph. It was me, young, maybe 7 or 8, standing with my parents in front of a Christmas tree. My father had his hand on my shoulder. My mother was laughing and scribbled on the back, "We were happy once, before the fear made us cruel." My throat tightened. Then came the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly. It was my mother, her face pale, eyes rimmed red. "He's gone," she whispered. I didn't ask who she meant. I just followed her back into the bedroom. The machines were still. The breathing tube lay unused. My father's eyes were shut, finally at peace, or something like it. I stared at him for a long time. "You waited," I said quietly, more to myself than anyone. "You waited until you could finally say what you needed to." My mother didn't say anything. She just reached for my hand and held it, trembling. The funeral was small, quiet. A few neighbors, old friends. No one asked where I had been all those years. No one said what they were really thinking. Afterward, my mother sat me down. "There's something else," she said. "Something I need to show you." She led me to the attic. Dust thick as fog. Old boxes. Broken toys. A trunk in the corner. Inside, she pulled out a thick binder. My name was written across the front in faded gold ink. "What is this?" I asked. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were pages and pages of printed emails, letters, screenshots, applications, records, dozens of entries, all correspondence with colleges, scholarships, housing departments, job agencies. Years of tracking me, helping in secret, paying tuition, clearing medical bills, donations under aliases, anonymous grants. "He couldn't reach out to you himself," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we never stopped watching, helping, even when we didn't deserve to." My chest caved in. "You helped me all those years?" She nodded. "Every milestone you crossed, every job you landed." He was proud. He just didn't know how to say it. Tears burned hot down my face. I felt like the ground had been ripped from under me. All this time, I thought I'd been alone, forgotten, discarded. But I hadn't been. I'd been silently protected, loved from a distance. I stumbled back into the hallway, back into the bedroom, back into the silence. And then I noticed something strange. His phone was still on the nightstand, still unlocked. I picked it up just to look. And there in his notes app were hundreds of entries. Daily entries.
To me.
Messages he never sent. Letters he never mailed. Words he never spoke aloud. Every single
day.
From the day I left to the day I came back. He wrote to me, "You turned 24 today. I wonder if you still like blueberry pancakes." Your mother cried again. "You got the job. I knew you would. I watched your interview 3 times. You looked so sure of yourself. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry." I sank to the floor. It felt like I was falling into a memory I never lived. And then one final entry, dated the day I arrived. "You're home. I can hear you in the hallway. I don't deserve it, but I hope you come in. I hope you let me say what I should have said years ago. I love you. I love you. I love you." I closed the phone, my hand shaking. I'd come back expecting coldness, bitterness, maybe even hatred. But I'd found something else. Something more terrifying.
Truth. Shame.
Redemption buried in silence. I left the house the next morning. My mother hugged me tightly, sobbing into my coat. "You'll come back?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But this time, I won't disappear." I got into the car, started the engine. But before I could pull away, I saw something. A figure in the upstairs window, watching me. But it wasn't my mother. And it wasn't a reflection. It was him, just standing there, still, expressionless, watching. I blinked and he was gone. Maybe it was grief. Maybe a trick of the light. Or maybe some goodbyes come too late and linger longer than we ever expect. Even in death, his silence spoke louder than his words ever did.